just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and this is the final segment of our Juneteenth Father's Day special episode. This is just going to be a little bit of potpourri, a couple of updates on some stuff that I've been covering. All right, the first thing I want to address is the CCRP. I always call it the Clark County Republican Party, but it's actually the Clark County Republican Central Committee, the CCRCC. Rolls right off the tongue, right? Anyway, their lawsuit came to an end. Remember, we had a whole bunch of people who were trying to join the CCRCC, and we had a meeting back in May that was canceled. And then there were all kinds of allegations going around that the CCRP was trying to shut some people out from joining. So that way only the people who they liked would be in there. And then there's a vote for the chairman of the CCRCC. And that is what the front runner was Carrie Ann Buck. But then people like Matt Anthony and Rudy Cly had presented some opposition to them. And they claimed that they were backed by the NVGOP, such as Mike McDonald and some of the bigwigs up there. Then after that, somebody who I believe is closely associated with Michael McDonald, more so than, say, Matt Anthony, would be Jesse Law, has said that he's going to be running for chairperson or chairman of the CCRCC. And just today or yesterday, the AP picked up a story about how Jesse Law, somebody who was at the January 6th insurrection, is running for the CCRCC. And, you know, of course, if you read the article, you realize he wasn't arrested, didn't do nothing wrong. And just like, 499,800 people did nothing wrong at the Capitol on January 6th, and 200 to 400 people did do something wrong, and Jesse Law was among the 99.99% of the people who did nothing wrong. But that's not how the headline reads. The headline reads that he was an insurrectionist. Number one, it wasn't an insurrection. I played on an earlier portion, Biden saying that some cop got killed because of the January 6th insurrection. False. All right? I can't play a video of everyday Americans going on the strip and telling me what they've learned over the past year and a half about COVID. They cancel President Trump's Twitter and Facebook account. But Joe Biden can go on international press conference and say that a cop was killed during the January 6th insurrection, which is 2 or 3 lies baked into one sentence. No problem, as long as it fits the narrative. So it's not about misinformation. It's not about truth. It's not about any of this. It's about the narrative, and do you fit the narrative or don't you? I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. So the lawsuit wrapped up where they were suing, I don't know if it was 8 people or 15 people, but it was one or the other. And they wanted to get into the CCRCC. The CCRCC said no because of their background check or their affiliations or something. And then apparently, Brittany Sheehan won her lawsuit against the CCRCC, but the other 7 or 13 people lost. And apparently it was because Brittany included an affidavit or something with her presentation, which is why she won her court case, but everybody else lost. And I'm really not too clear on it. I looked in the Nevada Independent. I looked in the RJ. Everybody's been covering this story about Matt Anthony and the Proud Boys and the CCRP and Carrie Ann Buck and David Sajak. But then there's a court ruling and there's crickets. Crickets. Carrie Ann Buck has agreed to come on the show. But as far as scheduling the exact date, we seem to be having some trouble finalizing that. Jesse Law has expressed some interest on being the show. I reached out to him as soon as he made his nomination public, and he gave me a solid maybe. Something about maybe he's got some friends who have their own show that might be mad if he comes on my show. I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes. I'm just trying to get people to know who you are, Jesse. I want them to know who you are, Carrie. Mike McDonald, I haven't formally invited him, but I'm going to. And I'm also going to be inviting Michael B. Jack, who's running for the NVGOP chairman. And I'm going to ask him some tough questions about what makes him think that one of Trump's besties, Mike McDonald, should be out, number one, and what he could do better than Michael McDonald has been doing. And I would love to present the same questions to Michael McDonald, why he wants to continue serving in this capacity. I want to talk to Carrie Ann Buck about what she sees with the future of the Republican Party in Clark County. And all this grassroots enthusiasm, is she going to embrace it or stay away from it? You know, Jesse Law, Carrie Ann Buck, Michael McDonald, Michael B. Jack. I'm looking forward to having you guys on. Again, two of those people have already said they will come on the show. One of them has given us a date. But I don't like to give away those dates only because you never know when you might have a last-second cancellation, and I don't want to disappoint my viewers. But I have more questions than answers. I also posted in Common Sense Nevada a new form with 2 new email addresses you need to submit in order to become a part of the CCRCC. That information was provided by Jesse Law, but you don't have to be a Jesse Law supporter in order to utilize that information and have your voice heard. So please go on to Common Sense Nevada, check out that post about the form and the 2 different email addresses they want you to copy when you send in that form. Even if you did it in the past, you might want to dot your I's, cross your T's, and do it again. Again, with the new court ruling, everything may have been reset or whatever the case may be. And if you have any information that could help me tell other viewers what's going on, please throw me an email to the johnnybrueshow@gmail.com or just give us a call. The phone number, I think, is 702-682-9983. 702-682-9983 or the johnnybrueshow@gmail.com. All right, a couple other loose ends I want to tie up before calling it a day right here is a quick update at the border. We talk about great Americans. We heard Ron Johnson speaking a little bit earlier in defense of Marjorie Taylor Greene. We've heard from, well, that's about it as far as. Oh, and we heard from Governor DeSantis, another great American conservative. Well, this is somebody else who I think deserves a lot of respect. I know not everybody's a huge fan of his, but I like him a lot. I have liked him. I even like the fact that him and Trump went at it when they were against each other in the primaries of the presidential campaign. And then when the campaign was over and Trump won the nomination, Ted Cruz and Donald Trump got along like 2 peas in the pod. I'm hoping for the same result after the Clark County Republican Party chairman vote, as well as the NVGOP party vote. I hope you guys who are running against each other, that the loser and winner are both humble and willing to unite, so that way we could turn Nevada red in 2022. So this first video right here is Ted Cruz following up to the Johnny Brew Show's coverage of Kamala Harris refusing to visit the border. Ted Cruz, play tape.
Right now, we have a massive crisis at our southern border. My home state of Texas is bearing the brunt of this crisis. In the last month, CBP agents encountered 180,034 illegal immigrants crossing the border. That is a 674% increase from last May. That is stunning. We are on path to have over 2 million people cross the border illegally this year, the highest rate in 20 years. Where were we last year? Last year we had the lowest rate of illegal.
I mean, he says stuff like 2 million people coming over the border in 1 year. That is not the Democrat propaganda machine hyperbole gaslighting. That is a numerical fact. And the 2 million number is on the low end if we don't do something about this. All right? They've been telling us since 2003 that there's 11 million illegal immigrants. All right? I'll bet you green money. And elect me president. I'll tell you what, Democrats, I will give you 11 million get out of jail free cards, U.S. citizen cards. You pick the 11 million best illegal immigrants, and the rest of them gots to go. I'm guessing there's another 39 million. Yes, the Johnny Brew Show is estimating the illegal immigrant population to be at about 50 million. And that's a lot of people. That's 1 out of 7 people in this country are here illegally. That drives up your rent. That drives down the job market, so on and so forth. But if we have 2 million people a year coming in, that number's going to get even worse. And what is the number of illegal immigrants the progressives feel comfortable with, where we can sustain our greatness? I don't know. Please continue, Mr. Cruz.
Illegal immigration in 45 years. To my Democratic colleagues on this committee, I ask you, why haven't you gone down to the border? Joe Biden refuses to go to the border. Kamala Harris refuses to go to the border. Indeed, Kamala Harris seems to go everywhere else except our southern border.
Yep. I mean, you could see a map of where Kamala Harris has been. It's like a big horseshoe. Everywhere, as long as she stays far away from the border. I think the closest she was to the border was Guatemala, which is like 2,000 miles away. She may have been in Vegas, but that might have been before she was the border czar and became allergic to the border. I mean, I don't know. Please continue. Ted Cruz, play.
In 6 months, the Senate Judiciary Committee has not had a hearing on the crisis at the border. The approach of congressional Democrats is they don't want to know. The approach of President Biden and Vice President Harris is they don't want to know. When asked about it, Vice President Harris laughed and said, well, I haven't been to Europe either. Well, you know what? Joe Biden's in Europe right now. Maybe it's time for the person ostensibly in charge of the border from this administration to go to the border. And there's a reason Joe Biden doesn't want to go to the border. There's a reason Kamala Harris doesn't want to go to the border. There's a reason Senate Democrats on this committee don't want to go to the border. Because they know if they go to the border, the TV cameras will come with them, and they have no answer for this humanitarian crisis that is playing out.
And he's exactly right. That's the primary reason they won't go. Do you know what kind of media circus it's going to be when Kamala goes down to the border? Especially since she's waited so long to do it. I mean, if she got named the border czar, ran down to the border, checked it out, and left, she would have been fine. But they've made such a big deal out of it. And what he's saying is exactly right. All right? We have all this talk about white supremacy, white nationalists, the terrorists are the biggest threat to Americans, and no talk about mass murders in Chicago on the daily. No talk about the 100,000 people that are caught and released at the border and the other 100,000 people who are gotaways. There's about 200,000 people a month pouring into our border. And yes, that's well over 2 million if we don't stem the flow. Why won't they address things that actually affect us? Like, is China attacking us with this virus? Is They're a way to stop people from pouring into our border. We only have so many resources, especially regarding hospitals and fire departments and police stations. How much is too much? You know, and I know somebody who has some of the answers. And while you might not see this on Facebook or Twitter, you will see this on the Johnny Brew Show. Donald Trump made an announcement. He himself is going to make yet another visit to the border. And why? Well, let's hear it from his own words. This is a local news affiliate in Texas who, it seems that the citizens living near the border are pretty happy about the visit. Play tape.
This evening, former President Donald Trump is planning to see the crisis at our southern border firsthand.
Now, the former president just announced he has accepted an invitation from Greg Abbott to visit at the end of the month. That's June the 30th. Now, the pair will address issues coming to the country like human smuggling, also influx of drug dealers, gang members, and more. In a statement, President Trump said this, and we quote, "The Biden administration inherited from me the strongest, safest, and most secure border in U.S. history, and in mere weeks, they turned it into a single worst border crisis in U.S. history. It's an unmitigated disaster zone." If you'd like to read the entire statement, you can find it on the website right now, k2k.com.
Thank you very much. And, you know, Trump's right. Again, I know I sound like a broken record. You might not like Trump, but his policy worked, especially at the border. The border was more secure than it has been in the past 40, 50 years. He handed that to Biden. The keys to the castle, a secure border. No problem. All the policies are in place. And just to spite Trump, they reversed all those policies. Just to spite him. And now we see the result. And then we have people who support Biden that won't recognize that. All right, when Trump said that we shouldn't celebrate McCain because he got caught and we don't like people that got caught, I said that was disgusting. I'm not a fan of John McCain, but he absolutely was a hero. And after being a POW for 2 or 3 years, he got the opportunity to leave because he was an officer or something. And he said, I'm not going anywhere until everybody leaves. So he continued to get tortured for 2 or 3 years after that. When Trump said something disparaging regarding McCain's service, I said, that's disgusting. I called it out. There's a couple other things Trump did that I said, you know, I don't agree with and I don't necessarily like. If you're a Biden supporter, you have to recognize the problem at the border. You have to recognize that he completely screwed this up. And if you don't, you're gaslighting yourself. It's as simple as that. Talking about, you know, things falling apart. Our major cities are in ruins. I saw the New York City mayor's prospects debating. And that cop that likes to open carry, I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a crazy liberal progressive. But of all the crazy liberal progressives that are running for mayor, I like him the best. I'd say Andrew Yang is probably second, even though he goes off the rails sometimes, but overall he's a pretty intelligent guy, and I think I'd take him over de Blasio any day, any day, any day. Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, all the most powerful Democrats all have their headquarters in San Francisco. And all around them and their homes and their districts, it's falling apart. And let's take a look at a viral video so I can give you a little bit of the Johnny Brew Show analysis. Regarding this video you've probably seen already. It's a viral video showing the consequences of San Francisco decriminalizing shoplifting. Play tape. All right, there's no audio really. You could just play it. You notice the guy just walks in to Walgreens or CVS with his bike and a plastic bag, and he steals an entire case of hygienic products. Now, 1,000 things contributed to this end. It's not just the decriminalization of shoplifting. It is the incredible rate of inflation in San Francisco. Things are twice as expensive in San Francisco than they are wherever you live, unless you live in San Francisco or Honolulu or New York City. All right? This is just a culture. This is the broken window theory. When you let one thing go, when you let somebody do some drugs on the street, next thing you know, there's going to be 3, 4, 5 people doing drugs on the street. When you let somebody set up a tent on the beach and you don't kick them out, you're going to get a dozen tents on the beach. When you don't arrest people for shoplifting, then you're going to have more people shoplifting. Now, this guy was shoplifting hygienic products. Now, I don't know if he needed 400 of the same item, but if he was shoplifting, shaving products or soap, or, I couldn't tell what he was doing, but it looked like it was a locked case, so I'm guessing it was, razor blades and stuff like that. I feel a little different about that than somebody breaking into the Apple store to steal an iPhone or the Nike store to steal a pair of Jordans. And again, I tell you guys not to blame the immigrants. They've virtually been invited here. And if you loved your family and you loved freedom and you loved the dream of becoming an American, now's the time to come. Make a run for the border. Well, if they're telling you they're not going to arrest you for shoplifting and you see a bunch of other people do it, well, now's the time. If you need some razors, I need some razor blades and they're expensive, man. I hope he got me a set. They're inviting these people to do it. And then when they do it, we act shocked. All right? I mean, again, everything's about the individual, but you got to understand what led the individual to this point. And I don't even think it's poverty. I don't think it's systematic racism. I think it's the invitation to shoplift. He was invited and he said, okay, if I can do it, then screw it. I'll steal some razors. It's the broken window theory. You either want law and order in your city or you don't. And apparently blue cities do not want law and order. I saw some kid get shot on the streets of New York City last night. The kid was walking with like his little brother and sister and buying him an ice cream, and some other kid, the kid was like 13, 14, walking with his 5, 6, and 4-year-old siblings. And another 14, 15, 16-year-old kid ran up to him and shot him. Daylight in the middle of New York City. I don't know if the voters realize that voting these Democrats in is what is perpetuating the problem. And you can't talk about systematic racism in a place like Chicago. Your mayor is black. And I think she's lesbian. All the city council is African American or black. The police chief is black. All the lieutenants and everybody's black. From the mayor to the city council to the police chief to the board. Are you telling them that they're systematically racist? I don't understand. How can you blame systematic racism on the downfall of Chicago when the politicians have been black for decades? When the city council has been black for decades? And I shouldn't even say black, I should say blue, Democrat. You've voted in African American Democratic mayors, police chiefs, school board members, assembly, and this is the result. It's broken. Why wouldn't you just say, screw it, let's vote Republican. Just for 4 years, let's give it a shot. Let's just see what happens. What have you got to lose? Like 1,000 people have been shot in 5 months in Chicago. More than 300 people have died. If nobody else died from a gunshot wound in Chicago, you would still average 1 death per day. You're averaging 2 deaths per day by gunshot in Chicago. That is an epidemic. And you know how many white nationalist, white supremacist deaths are in Chicago? 0. 316 deaths by gang members or affiliated or whatnot in Chicago. But white supremacists and white nationalists are the problem. It's not adding up. And I really hope, more than anything, some of you progressives start waking up. And guys, give it a shot in Chicago and San Francisco. Vote somebody red in there. They might not be perfect, but what do you got to lose? You've basically lost your neighborhood, you lost your city, you lost your economic opportunity. Give it another shot. Try something different, all right? All right, that's about it for this week. Thank you so much. I think it's like 3.5 or 4 hours of coverage. And that's just because there's a lot to talk about. I love talking to you guys. I really appreciate your support. We have the raw copies of that video I was telling you on the previous segment. Just throw me an email, thejohnnybrewshow@gmail.com, if you want a copy of that great video. Find out what the great citizens of this great country are thinking. And until then, we got a great interview set up for next week. We've got a lot of stuff coming down the pike. We got a lot of people who are going to be coming in. Next week is a great interview. I got another great interview for July 12th. And I have another possibility for July 3rd. So some really great things coming down the pipeline. I really appreciate your support. Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, please click subscribe. It's free and it's the best way you could show me some support. Otherwise, please check out the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast. Facebook, The Johnny Brew Show, Common Sense Nevada, YouTube. Just click in The Johnny Brew Show. It'll come right up. Hit subscribe. You can always get in touch with us, 702-682-9982. Or you could email us, thejohnnybrewshow@gmail.com. The phone number is 702-682-9983. My name is John Brookhagen. Thanks for joining us this Father's Day Juneteenth weekend. And I look forward to seeing you next time on The Johnny Brew Show.